Hey, Rich. How are you?
Hey, Mel. How are you?
Good. Thank you. So let's cover some more questions for you today. You're welcome.
Thanks for taking the time to answer great questions, Mel. We've got this next question that Pete's going to ask you is basically a two-pronged approach, but it's all basically leading to the same thing. So I'll pass it over to Pete.
Yep. Okay, so it's what exactly did you have? When I say exactly, not what exactly, but what generally did you have when you left materially?
Yep.
So what did you leave behind? And did you have a safety net of any kind? I guess when I first talked about this to Ritch, when I was asking questions, I was saying it's not a judgmental question. It's just to understand if someone took off to what you're doing, but stashed away a couple of $1 million in the bank. It's not quite the same as someone who left, with less than that, I guess.
Okay, cool. Really good question. So obviously, because it's out in a public forum, I'm not going to go into specifics of details of my financial position, and I know that you understand and respect that. But I'm really happy to, because this is actually a really, really important point to me, and that I really want to get out there, because I get so many questions about it, or so many people shutting down their thought process about even contemplating doing what they actually want because they think they need a load of money. And one of the things I try and get across to people all the time is that you just don't. That's a cop-out. And it may not be a cop-out from them. I'm not judging them or saying that you're just making an excuse. I'm saying that society has taught us to make those excuses, or told us, or conditioned us to be very aware, and this is what we must do to keep for our future, or how the heck are we going to survive, and what's going to happen. And I think that it's really important from my perspective. My lifestyle is not for everybody. I get that. I'm not pushing it on anybody. I'm just trying to say that there is hope. There is other ways to do things. And, if I can be an example of that, it gives people an opportunity to look up and then say, okay, maybe there's a way for me. It may not be my way, but maybe I need to look broader to see what I can actually do. So what actually happened when I left, I left in June 2017, but I had started working on it up to a year prior, because it really does take some time to simplify your life. Initially, I started off from the point of view is my life is just too damn complicated for one person. I have too much stuff, too many businesses and cars and houses, and I was trying to juggle them all and went, this is just ridiculous, the amount of bills that I pay every day on stuff that I don't even want or use. So I just started off with more of I wouldn't even say even a minimalist approach, but in retrospect it was. I've just got to downsize, make it simpler, make it easier for myself. And so I started to sell off things and digitize things and do all of that. And then with a chain of events that I've mentioned prior that prompted me to go away, I sped that up. So what I decided to do was just sell up get rid of all of my movable assets. So I had my home, and I went, I'm going to sell all the furniture in it, and I'm going to rent out my home, and I'm going to put my car up for sale. And I had my warehouse that I ran my business from, which is part of my superannuation fund. And I went, I'll just put that up for sale. But it had been up for sale for a year or two earlier as well, my warehouse, because I wanted I found that the superannuation structure was extremely expensive to run with and complicated for something that I had relatively little asset base in, because I had a warehouse, but I had loans in it, and it was just really expensive. And I thought I got poor advice getting into it. So it hadn't sold. So when I left in 2017, I had my house that was rented. I had my car up for sale, but it didn't sell. And I'll talk to you more in a synchronicity sort of a discussion of what happened there. But my car, my beautiful little BMW convertible, best car ever, didn't sell in 3 months. And so I had to hand that to someone to say, can you help try and sell it while I'm gone? Because I've got to go. And I've still got this bloody car up for sale. Who doesn't want to buy this car? And my warehouse still hasn't sold. So all of those things were pending. And I went, well, I'm just going to go for a break, and then I'll come back, figure out what I'm going to do, deal with that, and continue to live my life in Australia, probably, but just in a different structure. I ended up with, after getting rid of all of my furniture and furnishings, I have 6 tea chest size boxes that I popped in storage in a storage facility. And of course, all my ATO records that I have to hang on to for 5 to 7 years, they're all in there as well, but I don't consider them mine. I'll just chuck them out as time goes by. So that's how I went away on my break in the first place, and then went, I'll come back and maybe I'll just move back into my house when I come back and figure it out. So after traveling what was meant to be a few months, it ended up being a year. The signs that the universe presented me were very much, you need to go home. Nothing fell into place. I couldn't find pet sits. I was feeling uncomfortable. Just a whole 101 million little things happened again that said, now's the time to go home. You need to go home and deal with this stuff. So I came back to Australia. I then had to pick up my car, which was down in Melbourne. After a year, it still had not sold. So then I went back to Australia, back to Melbourne, where a lot of my family are. And as I say, I'd love to do a discussion on the synchronicities of how that all turned out. It was perfect, absolutely perfect. And so then I went, I'll come home and deal with all of this. And so I decided I just had to get up the backsides of the real estate agents to deal with my warehouse, because that was holding me back. So without getting myself in any legalistic trouble, I can tell you that there are laws in Australia around travel and superannuation, self-managed super funds, that are very, very onerous. And if you are considering travel, either in your retirement or prior, you need to understand them fully. And if your accountant tells you there's no problems whatsoever, go find another one and another one. It took me 4 accountants until I found one that actually understood the law well enough that went, yes, you're in trouble. And the only way out of it was to shut down my self-managed super fund. So go search that out for yourself. So that was my main priority, because it was holding me back from continuing to travel. And I had to do that. And then I had to sell the car. Then, as it turned out, in perfect timing, while I was there and trying to figure out what to do, my tenants decided not to renew their lease. So I went, do I hang on to this property or do I not? Now's my opportunity to find out if they're moving out. They've given notice. So I thought, well, I'll let the universe decide. I'll put it on the market. If it sells, I'll sell it. If it doesn't, I'll rent it back out. I've got 6 weeks until the tenants move out to do that and see where we go from there. I put it up for sale on the Thursday. We had an open house on the Saturday and I had 3 offers on it on the Monday. So I went, okay, the universe is telling me I sell the house. It's gone. And everything timed the sale of those assets synchronized in the same week. They all settled in the same week after 2 years, 3 years of trying to sell the warehouse. Oh, massive sign, massive sign. And I wanted to add in with this that the thing with that is that when you're doing this initially, yes, it's exciting and fun. Don't underestimate how emotionally difficult it is. We are attached to those items. And while I'm getting rid of all of my furniture, most of it was fine. But when I got to handing over the blanket box that my brother-in-law made for my son when he was born, I'm going, I didn't really want to say goodbye to that. And this is tough. And then when my house was empty, I sat on the floor and went, what the heck have I done? Like, oh my God, I don't have anything. And I sold it for so little. You know, I had an insurance value of X dollars and that I was paying insurance premiums on, and got a couple of grand for everything that I owned, and went, why did I pay insurance all of those years on all of this stuff that is worthless? It is absolutely worthless. And so, yeah, that goes a bit of an aside. So when I left again, when I went this time, I went, oh, now I have a view to doing this more long term with a different life. I sold out all my properties, but I sold out all my loans. So material wise, I have very, very little in the scheme of things. You know, some money in the bank, which is very, very minor, and certainly would not support most people in your life. If I was living in Australia now, it would probably support me for under a year. That's how little money that I have.
Now, in closing, I guess, with this question, how do you live? Because I think that most people realise that there's 2 different states. There's fear and there's love. So how do you deal with the fear of the unknown and dealing that on a regular basis? I think you and I have spoken previously, and it was on a Monday from memory, and you said, I don't know where I'm going to stay on Thursday night. Nothing's set in concrete. Yeah. So there's an element of fear there with regard that would be driving you to try and find some certainty rather than just the belief that the universe would work in your favour. So just in closing for this particular question, how much does fear work into that equation of not having money and the uncertainty?
Yeah, I would like to address that in a little bit of its entirety before we close this up. And then I probably would also like to do it as another whole section that relates to the whole travel side. But on the financial side, I guess what I look at, especially where I am right now, which is Southern Europe, which is a lot cheaper to live than Australia. And it would be the same if you travelled into Eastern Bloc countries or Asia, for example, Africa, is that in the scheme of things, I'm not destitute. So in terms of the fear of, what happens next week if I don't have a home, I can't afford a B&B or a hostel. I'm not destitute. Sure. I don't have nothing. So I'm going to eat next week. It's going to work out. In terms of the long-term fear, I have moments each way. I have moments where I go, they're getting less and less, but I still have moments where I suddenly go, oh my God, what if I've done the wrong thing? What if, from a financial point of view, what if I've made a poor decision here? And the key comes back to this. I've said to you before that I did everything right before, and the asset base that I built up for myself got stripped away by the actions of banks and tax. So when I look at, I can do everything right, and out of my control, someone else can take that away. And there is the fear of that. It's just that we don't realize that. Most people don't understand. They always say to me, I've had people argue with me incessantly. That simply would not happen. If you've never missed a repayment on your home loan and you've never done anything wrong, and there's nothing wrong, the bank will never shut you down. I went, would you like to go and tell my bank manager that? Because it happened to me. So until you've lived it, people say that just doesn't happen. I go and read the small print on your mortgage. It can happen. I know other people it's happened to. It does happen. So the only difference is, one is a fear that we see easily, and we're taught to see easily, which is a fear of not having enough for our retirement. It's drilled into us via make sure you've got enough super, make sure you've done this, we're drilled into that fear, versus the one that the fear that there could be a war, that I could get hit by a car, that there could be, tax decisions, bank decisions, anything that could leave me in the same position when I hit retirement or tomorrow. Anyway, it's just that we don't acknowledge that counter. So we have one fear that's omnipresent, and the other that's just as valid, if not more so, that we just choose to ignore. So I just went, the logic of that, the sheer logic, and I'm a fairly brought up to be a very logic-based person, is just that, well, I may as well do what I like, having fun. I've got as much chance. This is the stats. The chances are even either way. I may as well do the thing that makes it fun, and I'm going to figure out the rest later. And now that I've travelled more, I would say that the universe says that the more I trust that, the more it works. So I'm happier to keep working. So no, I don't have, right at this point in time, I have no income support. I do not do anything for money, and I haven't done for 2 years. And I am chewing a little bit in savings. But you have to understand that my level of savings is so small. But this is the kicker that maybe we can talk about in more detail if you'd like later, is that my cost of living is so ridiculously small, I can last for years like this.
Or a range that you can tell the people that are watching this what that range is?
Yeah, I will. I am planning, I'm trying. My life is so busy doing nothing, I haven't got around to it, but I actually want to keep a documented proof of it, because sometimes I go, I'm not sure how this is all working. I would suggest in Australian dollars, probably somewhere around the 150 a week, 100 to 150 a week is the entirety of the cost of my world. Yeah.
That's to live your life.
Yeah.
You skip down this.
Probably 150. Yeah. Yeah.
Just one. Yes. Just one of the healthcare, because that's a cost, isn't it? Is one of the fears? Does that come under fears that you hope to God nothing happens to you, or that?
Yeah, I don't just hope to God nothing happens to me. I work very, very hard at managing that. Of course, there's unbeknowns on that. And this is where I'd like to talk about a little bit more at some point, because people think that my life is chaotic and unorganized. And I know we want to talk about that a little bit at some point, and I'd like to address that, because I'm not an unorganized person. So let's not go into that now, because we'll get diverted into another thing. But in terms of healthcare, my healthcare in Australia, I cannot use it while I'm overseas. So I did have healthcare in Australia. It's exceptionally expensive. And this is the irony. So this is one great example. So what is it, like $300 a month or something ridiculous to have healthcare in Australia? So I had to put that on hold because it doesn't apply when I'm out of the country. But I have travel insurance, which costs me $1,000 a year and covers me for the same stuff.
Yeah.
So suddenly, okay, because I'm traveling. So that alone, I've gone from $4,000 a year to $1,000 a year for travel insurance. Now, travel insurance is very expensive if you're going on a holiday for 2 weeks, but an annual policy is about $1,000 a year. Actually, I think it was $700 and something a year. There's a few companies that do it. There's a few companies that do it, actually. Yeah. So it's just that, your normal travel insurance, I think mine's with Allianz Global, just normal stuff. It's just that people don't know that there's an annual policy. And you can't do an annual policy if you're going to come back to the country. So if you put out an annual policy and come back after 2 months and bounce home for a week, it stops and you have to restart a whole new one. But if you're going to be traveling around, so you can't do an annual policy for multiple trips. I think there is such a thing, but it's more expensive. So this is an annual policy. As soon as I set foot in the country, it will stop and I have to renew. And there has been some conditions around that, which is changing. I think they're realising they have a global network, global nomadic network, because when I left first time at the end of the 12 months, which I ended up coming back prior to that, but I said to them, I was contacting them saying, can I just renew this online? Can I get another annual thing? And they said, no, you can't. You have to come back to the country and start again. But then one company who was not based in Australia said, yes, you can just do renewals online. When I got back into Australia and I sorted it and I then shopped around, Allianz Global, who previously had said no, said, yes, you can renew online. You can just contact us online and put out another 12-month one after. I don't know how many years they'll let me do that.
Well, you've been travelling for about 18 months. In that 18 months, and I'm trying to get to a point here with regards to mindset. I think you'll read to where my question is heading. Have you been ill, sick, or needed medical attention the last 18 months since you've been travelling?
Not really. I have been sick. I did catch a cold off a heap of people and just curled up in bed. And I'd really like to address that separately, and I will. Basically, I've had little niggly stuff. I fell off a chin-up bar, landed flat on my back, which could have been really nasty. As it was, I ended up bruised. So that could have been nasty. But I generally work very, very diligently at managing that, and I know what I generally need to do. And things like, and I'll give you a quick example of that. And this is to do with mindset. This is about managing the risk. This is about understanding what is most critical to me. But what is most critical to me actually should be most critical to all of us in our day-to-day life. Once again, we feel that we've got a safety net and we don't have to bother. So my health is of critical importance to me, because if I finish a pet sit next week and I've got the flu, what do? I can't stay in their house with the flu. They want me out of here. It's not my home. I have to go somewhere else. So what am I going to do? Sit in a hotel room with the flu, or go to my next pet sit with the flu? I actively work on eating really well. I'm not on holidays. I'm not eating all the crap food because I'm on holidays, which you go, when I'm on holidays, I can eat whatever I want and then go home and get my weight back in shape and make sure I'm healthy and eat good again. I live this way. But I lived this way before I left. I was also conscious of my health, and we should be conscious of our health before we leave. And before we just live our life, we should be saying, I don't want to get the flu. But we don't, because we know we have this backup of our local doctor, our own home, all of those things. It's just more important to me now, and it has a bigger outcome. I also do little manual things like my core strength, is very, very high, despite the fact I do try and do some structured exercise, not always well, but the part of my life involves a lot of exercise. But if you're going through Europe, pulling a trolley with a backpack on, pulling a trolley suitcase style over cobblestones, your core strength remains very strong. And as I'm walking, I'm consciously, and I'm conscious, if I have my luggage, I'm looking all the time going, is there a pothole coming up? I'm dragging through cobblestones, I must walk straight. I must hold my core in, I must keep my back straight, because if I'm tired and rushed and I twist and pull, I'm going to hurt my back, you know, and I'm conscious of that. I'm conscious of looking where I'm going, because if I hit a pothole with a suitcase and fall over, I'm going to damage my back. And if my back's damaged, I can't travel for the next bit of time. So it's about going, I understand that those things are incredibly important to my lifestyle, and they are to your lifestyle as well. You just choose to ignore it. You just choose to ignore it because you know you have a safety net in place, and I don't. But you should be doing all of those things, because if you're suddenly self-employed and flat on your back for 6 weeks, then you end up in the same position that I did. You know, then you have no income coming in for a while, then you can lose your house, then you can have this and this and this, and we just don't think about it. We just choose to ignore it. The risk is just as big there, and you're choosing to ignore it.
You mentioned a suitcase, so that's a question. What do you carry with you when you go to your next port?
Yeah.
What do you carry?
All right. Can we address that one separately? And I'll do that one on travel stuff. So yeah, I think it's just to do with that. It is that mindset of, you know, making sure that I take care of myself, which I had before as well. You know, I was always considered a health nut. I've always wanted to look after myself anyway. It's just really heightened for me, and I'm critically aware. And I have had the one little thing that has happened, which I haven't dealt with, which would have required emergency care, not from an illness perspective, but I was just about to leave Lisbon, and I just, all of a sudden went, what's that feel? And my tooth snapped in half. My molar snapped in half. And then I went, oh crap, what do I do now? And I was leaving that night. So I sent a message to the next host and said, you guys got a good dentist? I just cracked my tooth in half. And when I get there, I'm going to have to go and see a dentist for that. And they said, no worries, we'll get an English-speaking dentist's names here ready for you when you arrive. I said, actually, can you make me an appointment? Can you just ring them and make an appointment?
Travel insurance cover that?
To a degree. I think if it was, I didn't ask, and I haven't actually got it done because it didn't hurt, and it all got in a too hard basket. I didn't do it, so it's still there. I think if it was putting me in pain, it would cover it. So if I said, you know, if it was making me dysfunction, yes, I think it will cover it. If it's just an annoyance, like a normal dental thing, no, it won't. So, but I factor it into the cost. I factor that into, you know, that I save $3,000 on my insurance. So I'll allow for a filling now and again. All right. Yeah. So does that answer those questions for you sufficiently?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much, Mel.
Okay, cool. See you later, guys.
Thank you.